The sun rose over Tokyo on the 7th of April 1945, painting Mount Fuji's snow-capped peak in hues of gold and crimson. The imperial capital stirred beneath a sky that had long been a sanctuary, shielded by 750 miles of Pacific Ocean and the unwavering belief that no enemy fighter could breach its airspace. Japan's military leaders had declared it impossible single-engine American planes lacked the range to strike the heart of the empire from distant Iwo Jima. Yet, at dawn, a low, unfamiliar rumble shattered the morning calm. 91 P-51D Mustangs, their silver wings glinting like blades, roared into view, slicing through the myth of invincibility. To the Japanese pilots scrambling from airfields around Tokyo, the sight was surreal, almost apocalyptic. These weren't the lumbering B-29 bombers they'd grown accustomed to swatting from the skies. These were sleek, agile fighters, American Mustangs dancing over the Imperial Palace itself. For the first time, the war didn't feel like a distant struggle in the Solomons or Philippines. It was here, in their homeland, a violation of everything they'd been promised. A young Japanese flight sergeant, staring skyward, later confessed he thought he was dreaming, his mind unable to reconcile the enemy's presence with the assurances of his commanders. This wasn't just a dogfight, it was a seismic shift in the Pacific War. The Mustang's arrival over Tokyo marked the moment Japan's last illusions of safety crumbled. The P-51D, a marvel of American engineering and British ingenuity, didn't just outfly its opponents, it outran the very idea that distance could protect an empire. For the American pilots, bleary-eyed after an 8-hour flight from Iwo Jima, this was more than a mission. It was proof that the United States could project power anywhere, anytime. The skies above Tokyo became a stage where industrial might, technological precision, and raw courage collided, signaling that the war's final chapter had begun. 8 weeks before the Mustangs roared over Tokyo, a speck of volcanic rock in the Pacific became the linchpin of America's audacious plan. Iwo Jima, a barren island just 8 square miles, was no tropical paradise. Its black sand beaches reeked of sulfur, and its jagged cliffs offered little shelter from relentless winds. Yet, in February 1945, 70,000 US Marines stormed its shores, clashing with 21,000 entrenched Japanese defenders in one of the bloodiest battles of the war. By March, the island was America's, but at a staggering cost. Nearly 7,000 Marines dead, 20,000 wounded, and almost every Japanese soldier buried in the ash. Why such a sacrifice for a desolate outpost? Iwo Jima was no mere dot on the map, it was a game-changer. Sitting 750 miles from Tokyo, it halved the distance between U.S. bases and Japan's heartland. Before its capture, B-29 bombers flying from the Marianas struggled to reach Japan, often without fighter escorts, leaving them vulnerable to swarms of Japanese Zeros. Iwo Jima changed the math. Its airfields, carved from volcanic soil, became launch pads for the P-51D Mustang, letting American fighters accompany bombers deep into enemy territory. Japan's generals had banked on the ocean as a shield, but Iwo Jima turned that shield into a stepping stone. Life on Iwo Jima was as grueling as the battle to claim it. By April 1945, the island was a makeshift fortress of dust and steel. Runways, still pitted from artillery, stretched across the ash, barely long enough for Mustangs to take off with full fuel and drop tanks. Pilots and ground crews lived in canvas tents, battling heat, flies, and the constant stench of sulfur. Fresh water was rationed, and meals came from cans, yet the men worked around the clock. Mechanics, often teenagers fresh from stateside training, swapped engines under lantern light, their hands stained with grease and volcanic grit. Every Mustang that lifted off was a testament to their grit, transforming Iwo Jima into America's dagger aimed at Tokyo. For the Japanese, Iwo Jima's fall was a gut punch. Their propaganda had painted the empire as untouchable, but the loss of this key outpost exposed a brutal truth: the Americans were closing in. As US engineers bulldozed new runways, Japan's air defenses scrambled to adapt, unaware that the Mustangs were already on their way. The stage was set for April 7, when the impossible would become reality, and the skies over Tokyo would belong to no one but the bold. In the pre-dawn haze of the 7th of April 1945, 2 men on opposite sides of the Pacific War prepared for a day that would etch their names into history's margins. On Iwo Jima, 4-year-old Lieutenant Jack Thompson, a composite of real Mustang pilots, tightened his flight suit, his breath visible in the chilly air. A farm kid from Nebraska, Jack had 550 hours of flight time, honed over Europe's skies before transferring to the Pacific. His P-51D Mustang, nicknamed Sweet Mary after his high school sweetheart, gleamed under the stars, its 50 caliber guns loaded with 1,900 rounds. As he climbed into the cramped cockpit, Jack's pulse raced not from fear, but from the thrill of knowing he'd soon be over Tokyo, a place no American fighter pilot had dared to go. The 8-hour flight ahead, skimming the Pacific with 110-gallon drop tanks, demanded nerves of steel. One wrong calculation, fuel, weather, or navigation meant a watery grave. Yet Jack trusted his training, his plane, and the buddies flying wingtip to wingtip. "We're bringing the fight to their doorstep," he'd written home, his letters brimming with a confidence forged in countless dogfights. Half a world away, one 9-year-old Corporal Hiroshi Tanaka, inspired by accounts of Japanese pilots, stood on a Tokyo airfield, staring at his Ki-84 Hayate. A fisherman's son from Hokkaido, Hiroshi had been drafted a year earlier, his training cut short to just 45 hours due to Japan's desperate need for pilots. His hands trembled as he checked his plane's controls, the cockpit reeking of low-grade fuel, a mix of 87-octane gasoline and pine resin that made his engine sputter. Hiroshi had never fired his 20mm cannons at a moving target. Ammo was too scarce for practice. His superiors called the Ki-84 a samurai of the skies, but to him it felt like a cobbled-together relic, its oxygen system unreliable above 15,000 feet. As dawn broke, he glanced at Mount Fuji, whispering a prayer for his mother in Hokkaido. The American bombers were coming, he'd faced them before, but rumors of enemy fighters reaching Tokyo seemed impossible. "If they come," his commander had said, "you fight to the last." Hiroshi nodded, hiding his dread. At home, his village expected him to defend the empire, but in his heart, he just wanted to survive. When the Mustangs appeared, Jack saw Tokyo's spires below, a surreal target after months of jungle airstrips. He flicked his gun sights on, adrenaline sharpening his focus. For Hiroshi, the sight of silver fighters diving from the clouds was a nightmare made real. His radio crackled with panicked orders, but his squadron scattered, untrained for this enemy. In that moment, two young men, one brimming with American bravado, the other weighed by duty and fear, became the human face of a war where technology and training would decide who lived and who fell. The P-51D Mustang and Ki-84 Hayate weren't just machines, they were the beating hearts of their nation's war efforts, each a reflection of the ingenuity and struggles of the men who built them. On the 7th of April 1945, as these fighters clashed over Tokyo, they showcased not only cutting-edge engineering but also the stark contrast between America's industrial juggernaut and Japan's fading empire. The Mustang was a masterpiece of speed and precision, a silver stallion born from American ambition and British brilliance. Its Packard-built Merlin V16507 engine, a refined version of Rolls-Royce's iconic power plant, churned out 1,490 horsepower, letting the plane scream to 440 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. The secret sauce was its two-stage, two-speed supercharger, a marvel that kept the engine roaring in the thin air where Japanese fighters gasped. The Mustang's laminar flow wing, inspired by NASA's wind tunnels, sliced through the sky with minimal drag, allowing dives past 500 miles per hour without shaking apart. Inside the cockpit, pilots like Jack Thompson sat snugly, surrounded by a perspex canopy offering 360-degree views, with intuitive controls and a gyroscopic gun sight for pinpoint accuracy. 6. 50 caliber M2 Browning machine guns, spitting 80 rounds per second, gave the Mustang a lethal edge, their 1,900 rounds ensuring Jack could stay in the fight longer than his foes. With twin 110-gallon drop tanks, the plane could roam 1,500 miles, a range that made the Tokyo mission possible. To Americans, the Mustang was more than metal, it was a symbol of Yankee know-how, rolled off assembly lines in California at a rate of 1 per hour, each identical, reliable, and ready to dominate. The Ki-84 Hayate, Japan's last great fighter, was a different beast, a samurai forged in desperation. On paper, it was a contender, with its Nakajima Ha-45 engine pumping out 1,900 horsepower at low altitudes, driving the plane to a respectable 400 miles per hour. Its direct fuel injection system, rare for 1,945, promised efficiency, while a mix of 20mm and 30mm cannons packed a devastating punch. But the Hayate's elegance hid fatal flaws. By 1945, Japan's war machine was starving. Factories, crippled by B-29 raids, churned out planes with shoddy welds and mismatched parts. Hiroshi Tanaka's Ki-84 might have a cockpit plagued by leaks, a radio that crackled uselessly, or an oxygen system that failed at altitude, leaving him dizzy and vulnerable. The cannons, though fearsome, jammed if fired too long, and ammo was so scarce Hiroshi carried half the rounds of a Mustang. Worst of all, Japan's fuel crisis forced pilots to use 87-octane sludge, sometimes laced with pine oil, which choked engines and slashed performance. One Ki-84 might soar, another might stall mid-climb, a lottery of wartime scarcity. Culturally, these planes told a deeper story. The Mustang embodied America's industrial revolution, standardized, mass-produced, and backed by a supply chain stretching from Detroit to Iwo Jima. It was the child of a nation that turned car factories into war machines, with women riveting wings alongside men. The Ki-84, by contrast, carried Japan's samurai spirit, handcrafted with pride but crippled by a rigid system that couldn't adapt to modern war's demands. To Japanese pilots, it was a tragic hero, a fighter that could have been great if not for the Empire's collapse. When Jack's Mustang dove toward Hiroshi's Hayate, it wasn't just a dogfight, it was a clash of worlds, where America's relentless production outmatched Japan's fading craftsmanship. The morning of April 7, 1945, erupted into chaos as 91 P-51D Mustangs tore through the skies above Tokyo, their engines roaring like a thunderstorm over the Imperial capital. Below, the city's tiled roofs and ancient shrines gleamed in the sunlight, a serene backdrop to the violence unfolding 25,000 feet above. Lieutenant Jack Thompson, gripping the stick of his Mustang Sweet Mary, scanned the horizon through his perspex canopy. His heart pounded as he spotted the glint of enemy wings. Japanese Ki-84 seconds, Zeros, and older Ki-43 seconds climbing frantically to meet the American intruders. After 8 grueling hours flying from Iwo Jima, Jack's moment had arrived. He flicked his gun sights on, the hum of his Merlin engine steady as he dove, the wind screaming past at 450 miles per hour. On the other side, Corporal Hiroshi Tanaka wrestled with his Ki-84 Hayate, its cockpit rattling as he pushed the sputtering engine to its limit. The low-octane fuel burned unevenly, spewing black smoke that stung his eyes. His squadron's radios crackled with garbled shouts, but coordination was a pipe dream. Most of his wingmen, teenagers like him, had barely flown in formation before. When the Mustangs appeared, diving like hawks from the sun, Hiroshi's stomach dropped. His commander's orders echoed in his mind, "Fight to the last." But as the silver fighters closed in, their 50 caliber guns flashing, he felt the weight of an unwinnable battle. The dogfight was a whirlwind of speed and steel. Jack's Mustang squadron executed their dive and zoom tactic with surgical precision, a playbook perfected over Europe. They plunged from high altitude, unleashing bursts of gunfire that tore through Japanese planes, then climbed back into the clouds before the enemy could counter. The Mustang's 6 Brownings roared, each bullet tracing a deadly arc across the sky, their 1,900 rounds giving Jack the luxury of sustained fire. One Ki-43 exploded in a fireball, its lightweight frame no match for American firepower. Another pilot, wingman to Jack, scored a hit on a Zero, sending it spiraling toward Tokyo Bay. Hiroshi's Ki-84, theoretically nimble, struggled to keep up. Its 20mm cannons could shred a Mustang if they connected, but the guns jammed after a short burst, a victim of poor quality ammo. He banked hard, dodging a Mustang's tracer rounds, but his engine coughed, starved by pine-laced fuel. Below 15,000 feet, his oxygen system faltered, leaving him lightheaded as he fought to climb. His squadron scattered, some pilots breaking formation in panic, others stalling as they tried to chase the faster Americans. A Ki-44, caught in a Mustang's sights, erupted mid-air, its pilot never ejecting. Hiroshi fired wildly at a passing Mustang, missing by yards, his lack of gunnery training painfully clear. By the time the Mustangs pulled away, the sky was littered with smoke trails and wreckage. The Americans claimed 26 kills, Ki-84 seconds, Zeros, and older fighters against just 2 Mustangs lost, a staggering 13-to-1 ratio that spoke to their dominance. Jack, climbing back to join the B-29 seconds for their bombing run, felt a surge of pride, his plane unscathed. Hiroshi, landing his battered Ki-84 on a pockmarked runway, was one of the lucky few to return. As he stepped onto the tarmac, Mount Fuji loomed in the distance, a silent witness to a battle that had shattered Japan's hope of holding the skies. The dogfight over Tokyo on the 7th of April 1945 was a spectacle of courage and firepower, but the real battle was won thousands of miles away in factories, shipyards, and supply lines that powered the P-51D Mustang and starved the Ki-84 Hayate. Behind every Mustang that soared from Iwo Jima stood an American industrial machine so vast it seemed unstoppable, while Japan's war effort crumbled under the weight of its own desperation. In Inglewood, California, North American Aviation's assembly lines hummed like a heartbeat, churning out Mustangs at a relentless pace, one every hour, over 15,000 by war's end. Women, nicknamed Rosie the Riveters, worked shoulder to shoulder with men, riveting wings and wiring cockpits with precision that ensured every plane flew true. Each Mustang rolled out identical, its parts interchangeable, its Merlin engine tuned for 100-octane fuel shipped from refineries in Texas. Across the Pacific, a flotilla of Liberty ships and tankers kept Iwo Jima stocked, delivering 110-gallon drop tanks, spare propellers, and crates of .50 caliber ammo. On the island, ground crews, some just 19, their hands calloused from wrenches, swapped engines in 4 hours flat, patching battle damage under the glow of floodlights. PBY Catalina rescue planes patrolled the seas, ready to pluck downed pilots from the waves, while weather reconnaissance aircraft scouted storms to guide missions. This was America's secret weapon, a supply chain that stretched from Detroit to Tokyo, ensuring Jack Thompson's Sweet Mary was always ready to fly. Japan's story was one of collapse. In Nagoya, Nakajima's factories, once proud, were shadows of themselves, scarred by B-29 firebombing raids that left production lines in ruins. Workers, many malnourished teenagers or conscripted women, toiled with outdated tools, assembling Ki-84 seconds with aluminum scavenged from wrecked planes. Engines, meant for high-octane fuel, seized up on 87-octane substitutes blended with pine resin, a desperate concoction that fouled spark plugs and slashed power. Spare parts were a fantasy squadrons cannibalized one Hay-8 to keep another aloft, and even new planes left the factory with faulty radios or leaking hydraulics. Fuel was the final nail. By 1945, Japan's reserves were so low that pilots like Hiroshi Tanaka often launched with half-empty tanks, praying they'd make it back. Entire units were grounded, not by combat, but by the absence of gasoline, forcing commanders to ration flights for only the direst threats. The human toll extended beyond the battlefield. In Tokyo, civilians watched Mustangs streak overhead, their confidence in the empire shaken as air raid sirens became daily hymns. Schoolchildren, mobilized to scrape pine roots for fuel, whispered of American planes that seemed to come from nowhere. In contrast, American families read of Iwo Jima's heroes in newspapers, their faith in victory bolstered by images of gleaming Mustangs. The U.S. system didn't just build planes, it built hope, while Japan's faltering industry sowed doubt. When Jack's Mustang returned to Iwo Jima, its tanks refilled and guns reloaded, Hiroshi's Ki-84 sat idle, its engines silent for lack of fuel. This invisible war of logistics and production didn't just tilt the scales, it ensured that America's air power would reign supreme. The smoke trails over Tokyo on the 7th of April 1945 marked more than a single victory, they signaled the beginning of the end for Japan's Air Force. The P-51D Mustangs' stunning debut, claiming 26 enemy planes for just 2 losses, sent shockwaves through Japan's military. For Lieutenant Jack Thompson, circling back to Iwo Jima after escorting B-29 seconds, the mission was a triumph, proof that America could strike anywhere. But for Corporal Hiroshi Tanaka, limping his battered Ki-84 back to a cratered airfield, it was a glimpse of defeat. The Mustangs hadn't just won a dogfight, they'd exposed Japan's vulnerability, and the U.S. Air Forces wasted no time pressing their advantage. In the weeks that followed, Mustangs from Iwo Jima became Japan's relentless shadow. They flew near daily missions, their silver wings flashing over Osaka, Nagoya, and Kobe. Some sorties escorted B-29 seconds for precision daylight bombings, pulverizing steel mills and shipyards that fueled Japan's war machine. Others were hunter-killer sweeps, with Mustangs diving low to strafe airfields, shredding parked Zeros and Ki-84 seconds before they could take off. By May, American pilots were racking up kill ratios of 20-1, sometimes 30-1, as Japan's pilot pool dwindled to teenagers with barely 20 hours of flight time. Jack, his eyes bloodshot from 10-hour missions, marveled at the empty skies. "It's like they're giving up," he wrote home, though anti-aircraft guns still spat deadly flak, a reminder of the ground crew's defiance. The Pacific's wrath proved as deadly as enemy fire. On June 1, dubbed Black Friday, 150 Mustangs en route to Osaka flew into a monstrous storm front. Clouds black as coal swallowed the formations, with 80-mile-per-hour winds tossing planes like toys. Ice-coated wings and compasses spun wildly in zero visibility. Jack clung to his controls, sweat freezing on his brow, as turbulence shook Sweet Mary to its bolts. 27 Mustangs vanished that day, most claimed by the storm, not bullets. The loss stung, but it showcased American resilience. Pilots regrouped, flew on, and completed their mission, a feat Japan's fragile air force couldn't match. By July, Japan's skies were a graveyard of ambition. Fuel shortages grounded entire squadrons, leaving key 84 seconds to rust on weed-choked runways. Hiroshi, one of the last in his unit, flew only twice that month, each time on fumes, his plane coughing like a dying beast. Many of his comrades, boys as young as 17, crashed on takeoff, victims of shoddy maintenance and no training. Tokyo's civilians, huddling in bomb shelters, stopped looking to the skies for salvation. The Mustang's roar became a daily omen, a sound that broke the spirit of a nation taught to believe in divine protection. As August dawned, the war's final days unfolded. On August 10, Mustangs scored 7 more kills in a fleeting dogfight, one of the last of the conflict. Days later, as Japan's leaders debated surrender, communication snafus sent Mustangs on final missions. On August 14, 2nd Lieutenant Philip Schlamberg, a 22-year-old from Brooklyn, became the war's last American combat casualty, shot down near Nagoya. His loss was a bitter footnote to a campaign that had already won the skies. By war's end, Mustangs from Iwo Jima were credited with over 200 Japanese planes destroyed, a tally that likely understated the wreckage strewn across Japan's fields and seas. As the sun set on World War II in August 1945, the P-51D Mustangs stood as a towering symbol of American triumph. Its daring missions over Tokyo, starting with that fateful April 7 dogfight, didn't just crush Japan's air force, they redefined what air power could achieve. For pilots like Lieutenant Jack Thompson, the Mustang was more than a machine. It was a ticket home, a testament to the grit and genius of a nation that turned assembly lines into arsenals. Over 200 Japanese planes fell to Mustangs from Iwo Jima, a tally etched in history as proof of America's ability to project strength across oceans. Today, hundreds of Mustangs still take to the skies at airshows, their Merlin engines roaring for awestruck crowds, a living link to a time when courage and technology changed the world. In the US, the Mustang is a cultural icon, immortalized in films, models, and the dreams of kids who see it as the ultimate freedom machine. For Japan, the Mustang's shadow was a painful awakening. Corporal Hiroshi Tanaka, if he survived, would have carried the scars of a homeland humbled. The sight of American fighters over Tokyo shattered the myth of divine protection, forcing a nation to confront its limits. Diaries from Japanese pilots reveal a profound despair, not just at defeat, but at the realization that their sacrifice couldn't stop the inevitable. Only one Ki 84 Hayate survives today, a weathered relic in a Japanese museum, its faded paint a quiet reminder of a fighter that promised greatness but was betrayed by a collapsing empire. Yet from this defeat rose a new Japan. The war's end sparked a remarkable recovery, with former enemies becoming allies. By the 1962, Japan's factories, once crippled, were building cars and electronics that rivaled America's, a testament to a people's resilience. The lessons of the 7th of April 1945 echo far beyond the skies. The Mustang's victory wasn't just about speed or firepower, it was about systems. America's ability to mass-produce reliable planes, ship 100-octane fuel across the Pacific, and train pilots with 500 hours of flight time created an unstoppable force. Japan's downfall lay in its shortages of fuel, parts, and hope, showing that modern war rewards those who master logistics and innovation. These truths shape the future of air power, from jet fighters in Korea to drones today, where precision and supply chains still decide battles. For Americans, the Mustang is a reminder of what unity and ingenuity can achieve, a call to honor the mechanics, riveters, and pilots who made victory possible. For the world, it's a lesson in humility and renewal, showing that even the fiercest foes can rebuild as friends. As we watch a Mustang soar at an airshow, its wings catching the sun, we're not just seeing a plane, we're witnessing the dawn of an era where industry, courage, and vision reshaped history, leaving a legacy that still flies high.